Hey, thanks very much, Tim. Just a quick check. You can see me. You can see my screen. Perfect. Okay. All right. Great. So we'll go ahead and get started. Really pleased to be with everybody here today. Thank you, Tim and Steve Sharp, for the invitation to come and speak to you today about the VertiGIS Studio workflow application. Joining me today will be my colleague, Paul Van Haren. So Paul is one of our solution architects. He runs that group. Paul is located in London, Ontario. I myself am located in our Toronto, Ontario office, so not too terribly far from Vermont. We're about 8 hours, maybe a 7-hour drive from Burlington. I am with the account management team here. I've been working with VCGI for a number of years now, so really pleased to be here with you today. As far as an agenda for our discussion, what we'd like to do, I'd like to start this morning by just reviewing for all of you what VertiGIS Studio Workflow is. And then we're gonna sort of turn the tables and talk about why you should be using workflow, or why you may want to use workflow in future web mapping or existing web mapping applications that the state has. We've assembled some workflow examples for you that you can take a look at either today if we have time, or we can send you the links that you'll be able to kick around and see what other folks are doing with the workflow technology. We'll provide you with a quick product update in terms of where things are with workflow and what's on the roadmap moving ahead. And then finally, I'll turn it over to my colleague Paul, who'll give us a quick 10-minute demonstration of the workflow designer application. At any point, Tim said you could save your questions, but if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to interject. Paul and I are here to answer those questions for you. We're lucky to have Paul with us today. As I say, he's on the technical side, so if you've got any specific technical questions, we've got the right person joining us here today. Okay, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Now, Tim mentioned to me this morning that some of you may not be familiar with VertiGIS Studio workflow, so let's start there. What is this thing, that we call workflow? Workflow is a term that we come across quite a bit in our industry. Workflow at VertiGIS really refers to folks a toolkit, if you will, that allows you to build custom widgets using a low-code configuration approach, as opposed to having to write the code and maintain that code yourself. And we'll show you how. We'll explain that further. But really, you're dealing with a library of pre-programmed activities that you can use to build widgets that hopefully match some of your specific business processes that the state might have. VertiGIS Studio Workflow does a number of different things. From a value standpoint, it helps reduce your development time. Yeah, actually, folks, I'm just going to turn off my camera here, and then that way we'll be able to focus on the screen. Great. So VertiGIS Studio will help you reduce your development time, because what it is a library of over 200 type activities that we, as your vendor, have created for you. These are activities that allow you to do all kinds of different things, and you can simply assemble them in a way that models your specific business processes. So you're not having to write any sort of custom code. It's all configuration, basically stitching things together. And what's unique about the workflow tool is that it allows you to model your specific business processes that the state may have, right? Using a drag drop type interface, or our designer that Paul will show us in just a few minutes. This approach allows you to model your specific business use cases in a way that doesn't require any customization. Another key value, another key benefit of the workflow tool is it allows you to automate your end user experiences. And this point in particular is very, very important. It's important because when we think about building web mapping applications, or any web application, we have to think of who the application is being designed for, right? People who use web mapping applications aren't GIS professionals per se. They're experts in their own domain. So as GIS professionals, we're able to take the workflow tool we're able to construct a series of forms, and we're able to walk your end users through these business processes step by step so that they can get to the answers for the questions that they have. And this is really what distinguishes, I think, our workflow solution from in the GIS marketplace. A couple other key points about workflow and things that you'll see today. Workflow is really, really good at integrating with different business systems, right? I mean, obviously, GIS is but one of the many business systems that the state of Vermont would have in use. Workflow is really good at going and grabbing information from, document management systems. It's an excellent tool for integrating with work management systems, asset management systems, relational databases, you name it. It's the glue that can be used to pull information from all these different business systems and present them again in a UI that's specifically tailored to meet your end users' requirements. It also allows you to present users with dynamic forms, right? So you can again step them through the processes for doing more advanced type analyses inside the web mapping application. And then finally, it's very flexible in the sense that you can design workflows such that they work inside our viewer technology, but you can also design workflows or widgets, if you will, that work inside Esri's Web App Builder or Experience Builder design environments. So perhaps some of you have applications that you've built with Web App Builder or Experience Builder, and you're looking for a way to be able to add, some customization without having to go down that development route. Workflow is definitely an option for you to consider because you can do so without having to, again, write and maintain any sort of custom code, which solves, a huge problem for most organizations. So this is what VertiGIS Studio Workflow is. Now, VertiGIS Studio Workflow is part of a broader framework called VertiGIS Studio. And what you see here on screen are the viewer frameworks and the capabilities that are licensed to the state of Vermont through VCGI. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with VertiGIS Studio, what you see here are the viewer frameworks. We've got a fully configurable web viewer built on Esri's JavaScript 4 API. We've got also a mobile viewer that you have access to, which really is chock full of feature functionality. It's almost a combination, if you will, of Survey 123, Collector for ArcGIS, so we've got the mobile viewer. Then we've also got these capabilities. We've got the workflow tool, of course, which is available to you, but you've also got access to a reporting engine, a printing engine. So if you need to do some advanced printing, that's all there. You've got access to VertiGIS Studio Access Control. So if you need to manage security, if you need to have tighter control over who can access your applications based on the roles and credentials, that's available to you. And then finally, we have Item Manager for a little tool that our developers have built that allow you to manage items inside your portal environment. So all of this technology that you see here on screen is available to all of you on this call through VCGI. Now, today's discussion will focus on VertiGIS Studio Workflow, but also kindly note that all of these components and viewers that are available to you, most of them are available for installation in an on-prem environment, right? That's what this icon denotes here, but they're also available as SaaS-based services. So for any of you looking to maybe trial workflow, or you want to kind of kick the tires a little bit, all you really need to do is access the web design environment, which is hosted by us, and you can start cranking out workflows right away in the cloud. The Esri icon on the bottom also denotes capabilities that are available for Web App Builder and Experience Builder. So the workflow, the reporting, and the printing and the item manager tools are all available for use inside Esri's Web App Builder or Experience Builder environment. So if you've got an application that you would like to, maybe add a report to, or you'd like to add a workflow to that's been built with, say, Experience Builder, the technology that you have there is extensible, such that it can be run inside Esri's application design environments. Okay, so why use workflow? I wanted to, in this discussion today, I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit, but I really wanted to sort of focus on, why or what some of the benefits are of using workflow inside your web mapping applications. And when I started to think about it, to answer this question, we should probably step back a little bit as a group and maybe take a look at some of the trends that we see happening in the world of GIS, right? We're an application vendor. We have the benefit of speaking to many, many different organizations all around the world. And we're seeing certain patterns and trends that are really driving the development of our technology forward. And I would say of all the components that make up the VertiGIS Studio framework, workflow is probably the most important, honestly, given the trends that we are seeing in the GIS space. So just quickly then, what are some of those trends, right? What are some of the things that we're seeing that are really kind of promoting or guiding our staff, with the development of workflow moving forward? First and foremost, I don't think this is any surprise to anybody on this call, is just the growth in location technology adoption, right? The growth of GIS continues to be huge. In the next decade, as the slide says, we look at these things and we're seeing significant growth in the use of location technology, which is being driven by a bunch of different things, right? One is the volume and the availability of new data. I mean, it's just pouring in, right, through the Internet of Things. I mean, we're collecting data from just about everything. But that poses the challenge. A lot of organizations are drowning in data, and it's hard to kind of process this stuff and produce applications that allow people to sort of discern information from all that data. The second trend is that we're seeing the increasing prevalence of technology like AR and 3D, right? That's really growing very quickly across our customer base and with prospects that we're talking to around the world. And then the number three thing here is new use cases, right? Which in turn are generating better GIS data and technology. So use cases are just, exploding everywhere. And it's just sort of leading to this growth in the adoption of GIS-based applications. We gave a talk to the Ontario government a few months back, and that talk was really centered around, for example, through COVID, the digitization of government services, right? How quickly everything got sort of digitized and spit out in the form of a web app, so that the public can now access government services. COVID really accelerated that, as we were all kept in our homes and still needed to kind of interact with various organizations. And this is just going to continue, we think, moving forward. The other trends that are really driving the use of GIS forward, in particular, really sort of having us focus on the development of workflow, is again just this broader usage and rapidly expanding user needs for data is really driving the growth of web mapping applications. And we're seeing this happening everywhere, right? And we're seeing it happen in areas that maybe haven't conventionally used GIS in the past, right? We all know as geospatial professionals that data, 95% of all data has some form of location. So GIS is really the backbone of good data management. But we've got, police departments, we've got, we've got commercial organizations, we've got government organizations of all types, all requesting, making requests to GIS departments for more and more applications. This poses a real challenge for us, right? Um, the challenge becomes, how can we as GIS professionals communicate information to, to the public in a manner that, is contextualized and understood by them, right? And we see it, unfortunately, we see web mapping applications falling short in terms of being able to provide the knowledge, the context, and the customization to the information that's being delivered to users and applications, right? So the trend is our users continually want better information. They want it focused and filtered to meet their needs, and they need it customized to match their level of knowledge and their level of skill. And so this means that web mapping solutions need to become more intelligent. They need to become more efficient, and they need to be more focused to support users and applications at the knowledge or the intelligence or the wisdom levels that they possess, right? So from our perspective here at VertiGIS, we're heading into the intelligent web mapping era right now, if we're not already in that phase already. And we all love GIS as geospatial professionals, but the people that use web apps, web mapping applications don't, and we have to accept that. And so again, the challenge is, how can we contextualize this data and turn it into meaningful information that people can use to make informed decisions. So in terms of where we think things are headed, obviously richer environments for developing, using, and visualizing maps, geospatial information, in the context of the business processes and high-level workflows within and across applications, right? So we're already seeing it now. I've got some examples to share with you, but web mapping applications are going to become better defined to feed the highest levels of information that people have, right? And this is going to be achieved through, we think, increasingly automated or semi-automated workflows, in which decision-making is user-driven, right? And it's why we're talking to all kinds of different organizations around the world in terms of helping them build out workflows that are making their applications, that are driving adoption of their applications. So case in point, just as an aside, we're talking to the New York City Police Department right now. And technically, when you think about NYPD, they lack nothing, right? I mean, they've got all the licenses from Esri. They've got a boatload of GIS professionals inside their organization who are able to crank out, applications, do the GIS that's required by the police department. But what we found, and one of the reasons why we're talking to them, is that they're really struggling with the ability to build web mapping applications that resonate with their end users. Right? The police officers, the men and women in the field, they don't want GIS applications. They want solutions that solve their business problems. And that to me sort of highlights or underpins the trend that we're seeing in the GIS marketplace, and one of the reasons why workflow is so valuable. So we've been working with the NYPD, for example, to provide officers, I think in the 75th precinct, I think it's Brooklyn, New York, with a tool that just simply allows them to open up their phone. It shows them where they are relative to public services, municipal services. So if there's a police officer, for example, investigating, an incident with a homeless person, they can quickly open up their phone and be redirected to local homeless shelters within a half-mile radius of their current position. Officers don't know where these things are. We like to think that they do, but they don't. New York City is a big city. But these police officers have not been using the applications, the web mapping applications that have been put out by the NYPD GIS department, or they haven't been using them at the rate or the level that the NYPD GIS department would like. And so they've really struggled with building applications that really resonate with the end users. And so to tie this back to workflow, that's really what we're talking about here today. That's really the point that I'd like to try and drive home, is that, with workflow, we can focus on providing our users, these non-GIS professionals, with guided user interactions, right? So I'll just launch this application here. I'll just share this with you quickly. Not a bad example. It's from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. It's their roads and projects viewer. It's built with VertiGIS Studio web viewer. But there's a workflow here on the right-hand side that it provides the end user with a guided user interaction so that they can basically see and find information that they're looking for in a fairly simple way. I can come over here and the forms are interactive, and I can start to type an address. We'll click 7 Haven Drive. The workflow will automatically talk to the GIS. It'll center in on the address. It'll center the map on the address. All of that's happening behind the scenes. We can, design our forms so that they're pre-populated with different levels of geography. So if I select town, for example, it'll open up a cascading menu, and I'll come down and I'll just select Concord. And then we can search and highlight the projects on the map. And I'm interested in looking at, projects that are in construction and in planning. And you can see that as I do that, the spatial data is being filtered, and it's just basically providing me with the, with the info that I require here in the Concord area. Of course, the map's interactive, so I could click on these records and I could open this information in a tabular view. Nothing particularly complex about this, but I'd like to say that this passes my dad's stress test. My father, who doesn't know anything about GIS, he himself could probably open this up and follow this form to complete, to filter out data and learn more about some of the projects that are underway, around this particular address. So guided user interactions really streamline the way in which your end users can interact with the application. You can simplify the number of steps that people need to follow, in order to complete a specific task. In effect, what you're doing through, solid form development is, you're putting the power. We're taking the power of the GIS and we're putting it into the hands of the end users in a way that makes sense to them. So critical to drive to ensure adoption of our web mapping applications, and to ensure that we're building applications that are going to resonate with the public and other stakeholders moving forward. Another key reason, folks, in terms of why you may want to be using workflow, integration of business systems, big one, right? So, not all data lives in a geodatabase. There are lots of data sources where information is being compiled. And, excuse me, here's an example of a, here's an example. I just wanted to show you an example of business system integration. So here on the left-hand side in the table of contents, we have, for example, a create work order workflow. So I'll just log into my CityWorks asset management system. Once I've done that, I am presented with a form that allows me to go ahead and create work orders, right? So, I just want to go ahead and select a location for the work order. So we'll select the corner here at the intersection of South Ellsworth Street and Jefferson Avenue. We drop that point on the map. The workflow goes and collects the address point. I can then select the entity, for example, that I want to work with. So we'll go ahead and select water. Now note that these fields are being populated by tabular information from the CityWorks asset management system. We can say that this is a fire hydrant feature. I can go ahead and select the templates that come from CityWorks. So it's a fire hydrant repair that we want to work on. We can go ahead and set priorities. I mean, everything that you see here on these forms, folks, are configurable. Yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar with workflow, you have total control, total design authority over how these forms are designed. We can add comments, we can add work order attachments. We can go ahead and create that work order so that the information that's been collected through the UI here gets inputted, entered into the CityWorks asset management system. Turn off these notifications from LastPass and stuff. We'll open up the work order inside CityWorks. Now, no knock on CityWorks. They're a great partner of ours. We love those guys. But the UI, the interface, the forms interface that's presented here can be daunting, yeah, to people who aren't sort of familiar with this system. So VertiGIS Studio Web, through workflow, you can streamline the process of capturing data and entering it into or retrieving it from different business systems. So here's the information that's been entered into CityWorks, right? So we can streamline these UIs and build a better experience for our end users. Now, the last example that I really want to talk about here is how workflow can automate for efficiency. And I'd like to share with you an application that was built by one of our customers here in Southern Ontario, where I am. So I think we would all agree, you know, we all work in highly regulated work environments, right? There are rules to perform specific things. There are regulatory requirements that need to be met, you know, with these processes. And so being able to create a repeatable automated process to meet those rules ensures that we're provided with a consistent set of results time and time again. Okay, so case in point is this application from the region of Waterloo. This is just for reference purposes. This is an area that's located about an hour west outside of Toronto, and they've built a source water protection application. So the region of Waterloo, like most places, I mean, derives its water from a variety of sources. In this case, there's the Thames River that runs through the area, so they're deriving a lot of their drinking water from that and from underground aquifers. Source water protection is strictly controlled in Ontario, as I'm sure it is in Vermont as well. We've had, unfortunately, incidents here in this province where people have died drinking from contamination in their drinking water that was derived from underground aquifers. And so the provincial government is really, you know, kind of gotten very strict with managing land use around areas that are at risk of contamination. And so there's a whole database of rules and threat assessments that need to be looked at when people are making amendments or changes to land use. Now, what I'm told is that the region of Waterloo, when they were doing this before, prior to the creation of this workflow, this would take them hours, right? And details and data would be lost, and it was captured in spreadsheets, and the whole thing was a dog's breakfast, excuse the expression. It was very difficult for them to assimilate, or to compile all this information and run it through the provincial threat assessment program. Also worth noting that the region of Waterloo is a fast-growing urban area. Lots of people moving out here, so there's lots of pressure on land use. So I'll just give you a sense of how complex business processes can be automated. So let's say, for example, I want to know whether or not the source protection plan applies to my property. So the form, the workflow form asks me to enter an address. So I'll just go ahead here and I'll give it an address. So I'll just type in 709 Glasgow Street. We'll run a search. Again, the workflow will automatically highlight the parcel in question. I know that I want to come over here and turn on my layers, so I'm just going to turn on the threat assessment layer. So the workflow comes back and asks us whether or not this property, this house, which has been identified as a single-family residential dwelling, is it going to continue to contain one single urban house? No. So, it informs us that the property is in fact in a source water protection area. We have to then start this questionnaire. I will register into the system. And the workflow is going to prompt me, the end user, with a series of questions that I can run through to determine whether or not my proposed land use is a threat to this particular source water area. So let's just say that we'll select these two guys. We hit the next button. De-icing salt. It's going to let us ask us whether or not the current or planned activities for the property, do they include storage of de-icing salt? No, they do not. So that's a problem. We'll hit the next button. They want to know the surface type, right? So we're just going to say that this is a municipal road. We hit the next button. And it lists for us a bunch of details for the planned activities. So we can just select these two guys here. Asks us for drainage areas. It asks us for, to kind of talk about or provide information on the type of land use. Set the defaults here. So this data is being recorded inside the system, but you can see how comprehensive, folks, at least I hope you can, just how comprehensive this threat assessment system is. And then it provides us with the policy codes that are coming out of the relevant threat assessment database. And it's providing all of the information to the citizen in terms of what they need to make, to find out whether or not their activities are in violation of the provincial threat assessment policies. So point here is that these kinds of applications they could be programmed, of course, from scratch, but the cost, the time, the effort required to do so would be too much. And the cost of maintaining this custom code would be too much. Everything you've seen here is being configured through the use of the workflow tool, and all of the underlying activities that are in play in this workflow model are maintained by us moving forward. So the region has been able to create this incredibly sophisticated application using components that are provided to them out of the box with the workflow technology. Okay, I have some other workflow examples here, that I'll happily make available to you. But I guess the point that I would like to make is that these are all very interesting workflows in the sense that they cater to different customer profiles, people who aren't GIS professionals per se. So we have this irrigation and nitrogen management reporting application, which was built for farmers who have to meet regulatory requirements. They have to report on what's being grown in this specific geography, how much nitrogen is being put onto the land, and what impacts that would have on the local watershed. This next one, find a post office, very simple application built by Canada Post, allowing people to simply type in their address, and this application will geocode that point, and it'll list for them the location of the closest post office to their house. Pretty important application in this country anyway. I mean, Canada's a big wide open spot. There aren't post offices everywhere. Vermont, very rural state. So it's a very useful application for citizens, but extremely streamlined, very simple to use. Anne Arundel County Viewer, definitely worth checking out, folks. Here's an application built by Anne Arundel County in Maryland that allows citizens to use workflows and get at information that they need about their specific areas. Who's their counselor? Who's their congressperson? Who's their what projects are underway in the community? When is my trash being picked up, et cetera, et cetera. Census dissemination. This is built for the average citizen. Here's a very good example of how we can take the power of GIS and put that into the hands of everyday citizens. So in this country, Statistics Canada is obligated, as I'm sure they are in the United States as well, to be very transparent about the results that have been captured through the national census. This application is all workflow oriented and allows people to really dive into the statistical results in a way that makes sense to them. I live in Toronto. I live in Swansea. I want to see what the profile of my neighborhood makeup is, and there's all kinds of great statistics in there that create these interactive dashboards for me to be able to do that without any sort of GIS type experience. The Federal Highways Damage Inspection Reporting application, extremely detailed workflow that allows inspectors, in this case, damage inspectors, to go out and capture details on roads, for example, that might have been washed away. I mean, we're seeing what's happening in California right now, potholes, sinkholes opening up. All of this information needs to be captured in a way that meets regulatory requirements so that the state can then apply for funding to repair all of their roads. This is really just it's a calculator, to be precise, that's been integrated within a workflow that allows damage inspectors to take stock, report on what it is that they're seeing, and then run estimates on what the proposed cost will be to fix this, right? And sort of automates that whole process using workflow. Police officers, this is the application that I was talking about for New York City, right? Police need to know what municipal services are near them based on the type of incident that they're responding to. Super streamlined, super simple application design with workflow to be run on the iPhone. And then finally, here's an example of a workflow that's been built for construction project managers who can, yet again, integration of calculators into workflow that allow them to calculate material costs, right? If they're working on a road construction project or something like that, they can calculate the shortest distance to a supplier of aggregate. They can then calculate the cost of said aggregate and what it's going to do to their construction costs. These are classic problems, challenges that are well served by GIS, but require a higher level of design, user interaction. And this is really where workflow shines, because it allows us to present information, take all the data that we have, transform it into information, and present it in ways that make sense to the end user. Okay. I'm going to turn things over to Paul here in just a second, but I just wanted to talk about a couple final, workflow-oriented projects that I think are noteworthy. I've already mentioned the New York City Police Department project that's underway, but just to give you a sense of some of the stuff that's going on here, we're working with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. They themselves, have encountered some difficulty in terms of being able to customize web application builder and experience builder for a disaster management application that DHS runs, and so they've turned to workflow to be able to get them over the hump of having to customize. They're leveraging the pre-programmed activities that make up the workflow library to get them to add the functionality that they require or that their end users require inside their disaster management application. The state of California, this is a really interesting one. The state of California has a $50 billion agriculture industry there. They are very interested in tracking pest management. And so they've got a number of people across the state who go out and, trap invasive species that could impact the state's agricultural economy. This whole process of being able to deploy traps, record what's in them, update that information back to the master GIS database, all of that is being run through workflow. The trappers themselves, not GIS professionals, they're domain experts in invasive species management. And so workflows have been created to help the state better manage and protect its $50 billion agricultural industry. Canada Post, big organization up here, obviously, similar to the U.S. Postal Service. Here, they've built a workflow-oriented solution, folks, that allows their customers, their commercial customers, it gives them access to Canada Post data and workflows that allow them to run mailing campaigns, calculate mailing campaigns, who they ought to be targeting for flyers. And this is a solution, just to put this into context, using workflow, the people that use this, the Walmarts, the Tim Hortons, if you're familiar with that Canadian chain, the Bed Bath and Beyond, all these commercial organizations, this solution has generated $10 million of revenue for Canada Post in 2022. And with workflow, they were able to build out these complex workflows on time, on budget, and in record time. And so they're seeing, Canada Post has been, has informed us that they're seeing a 63% conversion rate of customers switching to this tool when their sales teams engage with customers using the visualization tool and the workflows, right? So it really drives home this point that it's all about data visualization. It's all about GIS applications, but it's all about web GIS applications that are built in a way that really resonate with the end users' requirements in mind. Okay. Last slide before I turn it over to Paul. VertiGIS Studio workflow update. We continue, as I say, looking at the trends in the marketplace, we continue to invest heavily in workflow because we really see this as the future moving forward. To date, we have delivered on some key features that customers wanted. Workflows can now work in a disconnected environment. So if you are building applications for mobile field use, you can design workflows that work in a disconnected environment. So it's a huge R&D undertaking we've delivered. We're also now providing greater control over the display form presentation. So, for example, you can put form elements side by side when designing the forms. You can put the title beside the form element. You could orient things horizontally rather than vertically, right? So there's lots of control over how you can design the form. So you can design beautiful, beautiful forms for your end users. And we're always adding more activities and form elements. So some of the latest ones include get map screenshot activity. We've got a date range picker, a number range slider. We're always adding more with every point release of workflow. We've also now provided support for Experience Builder. So if you've got those applications in Experience Builder, or you want to build apps inside Experience Builder, don't let the GIS interface dictate what you put in front of your end users. You can use Experience Builder, but you can provide workflows in a forms-based, user-guided experience for end users using workflow. Coming soon, we're going to be providing workflow support for ArcGIS Pro. So for all the diehard GIS people, if you need to automate business processes inside Pro, you'll be able to do that. And of course, we're always adding more form elements. So we've got a signature panel coming that's going to help build workflows that, for commercial purposes where things have to be signed off and moved around to other department heads. If there are workflow events, if there are workflow activities that you want, please tell us. We are a nimble software company. We want to hear from our users. We want to know what you need in the workflow and the other modules as well. So please correspond with me, and I can get your input over to the development team. Happy to do that for you. Okay, I'll make these slides available to you, so you'll have access to those workflow examples. You'll also have access here to these resources. But with 10 minutes, Paul, I'll turn it over to you for a quick demo.
Sure. Yeah, just answering some questions there, but some good questions being asked there in the chat. Yeah, let me just share my screen. I'll do a quick demonstration here. Okay, so yeah, I'll try to fit this in about 5 minutes. Okay, so this is the workflow designer interface. So this is a sort of a canvas that you can use to design these workflows we've been talking about here today. So I think Steve showed some great examples. Workflows can be designed to do basic tasks, or they can be designed to do very complex tasks. And I think that Waterloo example is a good one. So you're really designing the tools for that your users need using sort of this drag and drop interface. A couple of notes about how these these tools are sort of saved. They're saved inside of your portal or your ArcGIS Align environment. So you connect these tools to those environments. And so when I save this workflow, for example, it's going to save as an item inside of my, in this case, a portal. So you're sort of saving it in the cloud, I guess, if you want to call it that, or at least a non-local place. And so that makes it easier to work with these workflows. Pick up the designer from a web-based designer and work on these and share with your colleagues, etc. You also have the ability to design client-side and server-side workflows. So client-side would be the ones that sort of run in viewers and mobile devices, things like that. So you can also design server-side workflows. So if you've got a task or something on a server, maybe it's performing some sort of task to an internal database, you can actually run like a Windows schedule task or something like that to run a workflow and have it run on a server on its own. So there's some really cool possibilities with designing server workflows as well. We've got some other options there to run in a sandbox, simply just running it inside of a sort of a test viewer inside of the designer. So just you can see on the left-hand side, if you're not familiar with workflow at all, we've got a large list of activities that you can use to design your workflows. It's sort of kind of goes on and on. I won't scroll too fast here, but you can work with feature sets, obviously with features, editing, working with attachments. It goes on and on and on, the different types of tools that you can drag and drop onto the interface, connect them together to sort of design these workflows, and it's in a flow chart sort of design. So we can look at a few here. One thing I wanted to point out, which is hugely valuable, and Steve sort of alluded to it, is its integration capabilities. And one of the things that we offer free of charge for all of our customers is what we call workflow activity packs. And these are groups of activities that we offer that you can import inside of your VertiGIS Studio Designer interface. And and basically use them as activities just like anything else. So in this example, we've got an FME activity pack that are designed specifically to interface with FME. So it kind of gives you a head start on, if you've got an FME instance and you want to start to do some jobs within workflow using FME, we offer these activities to kind of get you to connect to the FME instance and perform various tasks. Of course, we've got the CityWorks one. That's what some of these activities were used in the example that Steve showed. I'm going to scroll down. I won't go too fast. I think at the bottom, there's a couple I wanted to point out as well. Yeah, utility network. So those, if you're Esri's utility network, so if you're kind of thinking about this or have it already deployed, we've got some activities for a utility network. Maximo is another one, and even Factol as well, if you're familiar with that. I got a simple workflow started here, and this is sort of the general design you go with. This is very basic, but generally you start with a setup container. So really you're just telling the workflow to, what layer are you using? What's the idea of that layer? Really just this is a very basic way to sort of set up the workflow, set up your variables that are going to be used throughout the workflow, so that it's sort of easier to configure. So you're not hard coding URLs everywhere. Set up your variables just like any other kind of development software. Set up your variables so that you can use them throughout the workflow. And then we have a query and features. We're missing something here though, and it's a display form, and that's really where your user interactions are going to take place, right? And so I'm going to drag and drop a display form activity, connect that to my workflow here in this case. And so when I double click on the display form, I've got some options now specifically for display form. So I've got a list of form related activities that I can drag and drop onto the canvas here now. So number range slider, I can, obviously there's lots of different things. I can do them side by side like this as well. So if you're familiar, I think somebody mentioned GeoCortex Essentials workflow, which is sort of our legacy workflow technology. It certainly wasn't this easy to kind of put these things together. Similar, but we've definitely done an upgrade here with the design interface, if you're familiar with that, with the essentials version of this. So what I can do is I'm just going to provide an example. This is just going to be a simple parcel search workflow. So what I can do is give it a title. So this is what it's going to appear at the top of the workflow. I'm going to give it a text box. This is just going to be my search area. So please, I could spell here. Please enter a parcel ID. And I'm going to leave it like that. So what I can do now, I've got a form. I'm going to give it a quick save. I'm going to go over to my viewer here. So this is the VertiGIS Studio Web Designer interface. And what I can do is I can add that workflow to a lot of locations in web. It's pretty flexible that way. But I'm just going to simply add it into the I want to menu and see what it looks like. So with VertiGIS Studio Web, you have that direct integration here to all of our products. So I can jump right to this tab here, find that sample search workflow that I just saved, select that, and it can be added right away to my I want to menu. And I can actually run this inside of the VertiGIS Studio Web Designer interface and see what it looks like here. So I've got an example, parcel ID that I can use, run, finds it, pretty basic stuff. So so really easy to kind of get a simple workflow like this up and running and working. And really, just to kind of highlight this is very simple, right? You're running a query against the service that I'm doing it on. So this is the tax parcel layer, and then simply selecting the features at the end here. So display the results details in the viewer, zoom to those features, and highlight those features. So really basic stuff, but this is where you kind of start. I've got a more advanced search workflow here, and this is where you can expand on that, right? So you can have in this workflow, I've got same idea. You're still searching for parcels, but now I've got the ability to search by the owner of that parcel, the address of that parcel, and the ID as well. So let's add that one in quick. This is going to be the last thing I do, just to see what this one looks like. Same thing. It's more of the advanced one. It's added to my menu here. And so you can see here now that I've got additional options, and with VertiGIS Studio Workflow, you can see it's a dynamic form. You can see that the options are changing as I select these radio buttons. So again, this is sort of just the beginning. You can the idea here is you can design whatever application or a widget that you're looking for, and the possibilities are almost endless with workflow. So very powerful technology. That's what all I have there, Steve.
That was thanks, Paul. I mean, that was we just wanted to share with for those of you who aren't familiar with the UI, what the design experience looks like and how one goes about creating these workflows. So thanks for that. All right, Tim. Wow, 2 minutes to go. I'm sorry, we have a lot to talk about, but we'll happily answer any questions that folks might have.
Sure. Just in the interest of time, it seems like a couple of the earlier questions about mobile capability integration with some Esri products have been addressed in the chat. I don't know if you want to say anything more about those in particular, or if there's one still outstanding question about particular experience builder integration, expanding some of its print capabilities, which are limited to date by our experience.
Yeah, Paul, would you happen to know does the print widget, does it work in Experience Builder? Are they?
Yeah, the print widget does. Workflow works there. Reports can be called from workflows and Experience Builder as well. So absolutely, it's all ready to go with Experience Builder. Developer Edition now. The online version of Experience Builder isn't extensible at all just yet. That's an Esri thing. But once it is, we'll have our widgets available there. I just wanted to, on that point, I wanted to make a note that our widgets are available in ArcGIS Online Web App Builder. So we've got those widgets available in the Esri Marketplace. So so you can both do the developer edition of Web App Builder or the ArcGIS Online version. Both of those options are available.
Very good. I know we asked our colleague Colin Dowie of A&R ACC DGIS to show a Vermont example in use, but we're probably short on time for that. Colin, let's pick up with that in our next month's business meeting, just so we can build off of this, if you're cool with that. And then Steve and Paul, any other insights you want to leave us with? You had mentioned before you were willing to share your slides, which have functioning hyperlinks. We're happy to distribute that. I'm sure folks will be interested. For other folks too on the call as we close, my colleague Steve Sharp here at VCGI is very much in the know with our licensing details on behalf of the state of Vermont. So should you have questions about that, please follow up with Steve. Steve, you want to mention anything there along those lines?
Yeah, I think that Steve Sharp. Thank you, Steve Maddison and Paul. Great presentation. It's nice to generate greater awareness. So what I'll just say briefly is that the state of Vermont has a enterprise tier 2 license with VertiGIS. I can't pronounce it correctly, but VertiGIS, formerly Latitude, and that license provides us access to a lot of stuff that you've seen here today. Again, details follow up with me. The key caveat, though, is that internally within the state we have an MOU between agencies that dictates the cost sharing, and so that's how we share the cost of the licensing. As well as how we share the cost of our on-prem deployment of GeoCortex Essentials. So I'll post here in the chat the current agencies that are signatories. And so for those of you who work for one of these, it means you're part of the agreement and you're part of the cost share. And so it's just a matter of, figure out the details if you don't currently know how to access this technology. If you're not part of one of these agencies, then and you think you're interested, reach out to me.
Very good. Well, thanks again, Steve Sharp. Thanks, Steve and Paul from Verti, and we very much appreciate you sharing this info, and do send along your slides when you get a chance, and we'll distribute accordingly. So from south of the international border, much appreciated.
Thank you very much, folks. It was great reconnecting with all of you, and Paul and I are available for any additional questions. So Tim, if anything comes through, just pass it over to us, and we'll get those questions answered for you.
Very good. Take care, all.
All right. Thank you, folks. Good to see you.
Thank you all.